Hello there, friends and RC family. My name is Alec from High Noon Hobbies, and today we are headed back to Black Rocks for 2 more runs so we can compare the difference between a completely new comp driver and an experienced pro. If you're new to the channel, I very much appreciate you checking it out. I hope you will stick around, watch at least this video, see if this content seems worth your while, and consider subscribing so that then I can say to you, if you aren't new here, welcome back to yet another Friday upload. This time we are comparing 2 very different runs from 2 very different drivers on the Black Rock course that Scumbag RC set up just a couple weekends back. We'll start off with Kenny. And Kenny, this is one of his very first RC competition runs. He's run a few competitions in the past, but this is the first time that his truck has really been up and running and 100% ready for the comp. And so this is basically the first time that he's really gotten a shot at competing in a 10-gate competition. In contrast, the second run that we're going to be looking at is from Rango. Anyone who knows Rango in this area knows that he is a very competitive driver, and he definitely knows what he's doing. He's been through many comps, and I've seen him progress even through last season and become a really great driver, and he already was one. So I'm curious to see what the difference is between these 2 drivers. The things that I'm mostly going to be focusing on in this video are the small mistakes that new drivers make that add up to a big difference at the end of the day. Now, this isn't to say that Kenny's run was a bad run. Not by any means. Kenny's run was a fantastic run. I have personally botched runs far beyond saving, and this was not the case for Kenny today. But I did notice that as he was running through, there were a few small mistakes that he made, which I think any new driver is prone to making. And so I wanted to kind of go through Kenny's run first, talk about some of the issues that maybe he had throughout his run, some of the small mistakes that I don't even know if he realized he was making, and then we'll jump into Rango's run after the fact, or after Kenny's run, and we'll see how that compares and how Rango maybe utilizes his movement and time a little bit differently as someone who has been through multiple comps. So, without further ado, let's just jump straight into these runs. All right, starting straight off, a little bit late for Kenny's run here, so I've added just a few seconds on, but you can see that he's already hung up on his skid plate there, and I think on his rear diff, and that's something that I think is a combination of not quite knowing the tolerances of this rig, kind of being new to it, and not knowing exactly what you can get away with, maybe not having quite as much experience with straight axles, which I run a straight axle on my comp rig as well, and I can tell you it definitely has its downsides, especially when you've got a bunch of hang-up rocks like we do on this particular course. But nonetheless, he was able to he managed to get up and over that hang up without having to use a reverse, so not a big deal there. But he does approach this rock at kind of an odd angle, and instead of doing what he's doing here, where he's taking a full loop around, he ends up taking 2 separate reverses to try to get himself set back up for that breakover angle. I think that's something that new drivers struggle with. Probably one of the things that they struggle with the most is taking their time to assess the situation and really see if a reverse is the most beneficial option, or if there's another way that they can avoid taking that point for a reverse and maybe get themselves set up in a similar way or an even better way. Now, unfortunately, Kenny hits that first gate. That definitely takes a ding to your confidence when you hit the very first gate. It wasn't a gimme by any means, so it's understandable that he hit it, but it is unfortunate. It's going to set you up for maybe trying to rush the rest of the course and getting a little bit more in your head. I think that's kind of what's happening here to Kenny on gate number 2, is that he's just a little bit in his head, and he ended up the second kind of point, or maybe third point at this point, that I wanted to make note of is a little bit of lack of throttle control coming into that second gate. Caused him to get bound up and then pop, and when he popped over to the passenger side and ended up tapping the gate on the passenger side. So really an unfortunate turn of events there for Kenny. I don't think that there's too much he could have done to avoid that besides maybe assess the situation, take just an extra second, and instead of applying additional additional throttle to try to get out of a bind, maybe just jimming the steering servo or something of the sort to avoid that pop that he ended up having because he applied throttle while he was bound up. Something that can happen to everyone, but I think something that probably happens a bit more to new drivers as they're getting used to their rig, as well as kind of getting used to that throttle control. Now again, here, kind of a bummer that he had to take that reverse, but that's not something I would say is solely because he's a new driver. I actually saw quite a few different drivers have issues right there on that passenger side turn, and he was not the only one that I saw having to reverse there. That being said, he probably could have taken a bit more advantage of that reverse, taken a bit more of a wide approach to this next obstacle that he's on now, which could have potentially avoided that second reverse that you saw him take as he tried to get up and onto this obstacle. Now, that, again, not entirely his fault. That approach to gate number 6 there was very, very sandy and very loose, and did catch many drivers off guard, especially as the day went on and that sand got even looser, myself included. So definitely not not solely because he's a new driver, but I think taking a wider approach may have been able to avoid that. Now here again, just kind of struggling in assessing the situation. I think this is where a more experienced comp driver, one of the things about being new to the comp world is that you feel a lot like you're under pressure, right? You feel like the clock is against you, everyone else is against you, and you're just not able to fully think through everything as it's happening and really take your time. So I think that's what happened there. I think Kenny maybe could have had a slightly cleaner run through that section, but even that being said, I think that was a very tough section, caught even the most experienced drivers for a loop, or threw even the most experienced drivers for the loop, and so I don't fault Kenny's newness to the fact that he was having some troubles getting through there. Now, when he popped his rig up and over and flipped it, I would say that is a throttle control issue, but that being said, it landed on its wheels, so you can only judge someone so much when something they do actually turns out for the better. So he ended up in a pretty good situation there and was able to square up and make it through that gate. Now, unfortunately, I think he, on that last, on not gate number 8, this is 9, not on 8, but on 7, the one with the nasty V-notch, I think that he just didn't quite line up to it. Once he was squared with the V-notch, he wasn't kind of working the angles correctly, and he ended up sliding onto that driver's side cone. Kind of unfortunate there. You can see he makes it over 9, no problem, definitely taking his time, and it works out well for him. Now he flips a very, very tight U-turn and heads straight for gate number 10. I think a more experienced driver, knowing that they've got a minute and a half left, probably would have pushed for one of the bonus gates to try to eliminate some of those points. Either way, great job, Kenny, and those mistakes, they're going to iron themselves out. You're going to get more comfortable with your rig. You're going to get more comfortable with assessing the situation. Thank you, Rango, for that beautiful stretch. And I think you will only continue to grow as a driver and become a more competent comp driver as time goes on. So thank you for letting me film you, Kenny, and I appreciate your contributions to this video. That being said, I do think that there were a few mistakes that he made there that I pointed out, and I hope that might help you guys see some of the issues or some of the errors that you're making in your own driving. Now here we're going to take a look at Rango DeSoto. Our friend Rango, that's what I'm going to call him. Here, as you can see, rocking the Three Brothers Cliffhanger body and a very nice shot through gate number 1 there. You can see that he lined himself up for that breakover angle so that he didn't have to worry about repositioning himself. Now, even if he did have to reposition himself, he set himself up on that gate number 1 to be able to do the loop without having to do a reverse. Didn't end up needing that, but he did set himself up for it. So something to consider there. I think Rango just is a little bit more experienced with his truck, a lot more experience with his truck, understands the tolerances a little bit more, understands what he can get away with, and he set himself up for that breakover angle given that knowledge. Same there with gate number 3, that descent. Although Kenny had no trouble with the descent, Rango, you can see, very planted through there, really matching wheel speed with gravity, and was able to make it through there no problem. Headed into gate number 5 here. This is actually Rango's gate, but this is not how he intended for it to be ran. He intended for it to be ran on the gnarly breakover angle that his foot is pointing towards right now, but instead, we saw in the last video of this comp series, which if you didn't catch that, go ahead and take a look at last Friday's video, but in the last video, we saw Taylor actually bail off of this ridge and come down where Rango is right now, going the opposite direction, and kind of essentially finding this line for the rest of the group. Taylor using that bail and then actually looping back around and using the same line to get back up. He was the first one to kind of break that trail, and Rango is going to follow suit, of course. Being a driver with a lot of experience, if you see someone break open a trail that's going to make the comp easier, absolutely you're going to go for it. Now, unfortunately, you can see there, same situation, that turn just gets a lot of drivers, and in this situation, Rango actually ended up kind of almost on his lid. He is able to straighten it back up, but then he still has to take that reverse to be able to make that sharp turn. Headed through gate 6 with no issues, but now we're headed into gate 7, and we're going to see a lot of the same issues here that Kenny was actually experiencing. This is a problem when you are trying to square up to a V-notch, but you're essentially already sideways while you're in the V-notch. And you can see here, Rango trying to take that reverse to get himself in a position where he can square up to it, but in reversing, he ends up just pushing that rear axle against the far side of the V-notch to him and causing himself even more troubles. Now he ends up here completely on his lid after trying to kind of just finesse the throttle to get himself into a better situation. That's a toughie, but I don't know how much of that could have been avoided. And this might be a good time to point out the caveat that we are not using winches on this particular run. Now, in this situation, I think through this V-notch, this is a perfect example of a spot where using a winch just to drag your front end through would be really, really beneficial. Now, unfortunately, in this particular comp, or unfortunately for Rango in this situation, we're not allowing winches, and we don't have a winch stick, and I don't think he has a land anchor, but either way, we're not allowing winches, so he wasn't able to kind of drag himself square. And so he's got to work it and figure out another way to do it. Now you can see here, really getting close to those gates, but that meticulous throttle control keeps him just in the threshold of safety, but just barely. So well done there on that gate number 7, Rango. That was a well-fought or a hard-fought battle to get through that gate number 7 without touching one of those cones. Really would have been a bummer if you spent all of that effort, ended up with that rollover, and then ended up tapping one of the gates on gate number 7. Headed through gate number 8, you can see Rango actually pushing his driver's side front tire just a little bit farther up that ridge, which allowed him to get farther through that gate before he had to apply throttle, which just made it look just slightly more controlled than Kenny's run. But again, not a huge difference there. I think both of them did well on gate number 8. And coming through gate number 9, Kenny actually didn't have any issue whatsoever coming through this gate, but Rango here ends up in a bit of a situation. Now, this is something where I would say pro driver making a bit of an error that maybe a new driver would be more prone to making, but that doesn't mean that a pro driver isn't going to make an error like this every once in a while. Rango came through gate 9 and made it look like it was super easy, but then as he was pushing his that front axle forward, he didn't really pay attention to where he was pushing it and ended up completely off of this giant ledge. Now, in trying to work his way back, he actually ends up down on the bottom side of the ledge, and now he's in a really sticky situation. And this, I think, is where Rango's experience in competitions is really showing. Okay, so yes, he's having to work for it. Yes, he's having to fight really hard. Yes, he's in a very bad position, but look at it. He's still fighting for it. He's taking his time. He's understanding what he needs to do. He's not pushing his rig into a situation that it's going to fail or break. He's really just working his way through it, and I think that's where a pro driver, that those nerves are calm, and he's able to make his way through it without any issue. So a great job there from Rango finishing that run out. All right, folks, that's all I've got for you this time on the channel, but I appreciate you sticking it out until the end of the video. If you did like it, go ahead and give this video a like, and make sure to subscribe to High Noon Hobby if you want to see more videos like this every single week. I'll catch you on the live stream on Sunday, but until then, I hope you enjoy some hard lines, some scale trails maybe, and we'll see you on the next one. Oh, and hey, before I forget, definitely go make sure to check out highnoonhobby.com/shop and see some of that 2023 merch. Maybe there's something there that'll catch your eye. All right, guys, we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.